Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What's the craziest HOA, homeowners association, rule or regulation you've heard about or live with? Part 2. Being the country guy I am, I was looking for a used push mower and was browsing the local paper. Seen a great steal of a price and promptly called about it. Lady have me directions and I went off to buy it. When I got to the beautiful suburbs, the old man came out and was really nice. I asked him to start it up and then he let me give it a try. Asked him if it cut good and he said yeah, so I promptly pushed it onto the lawn to make sure even though their grass was already cut. I thought the old man was going to stroke out right there in front of me. He started mumbling something and waving his hands while his wife ran outside yelling at me. Turns out the HOA was very strict about lawn height and uniformity. She yelled at her husband to immediately go online and figure out how to repair cut grass. Again, how to repair cut grass. My son and I looked at each other and through our laughter telling her it would grow back and that is how cut grass is repaired. She was blinded by rage and told us to just take the lawnmower and leave because she needed to get inside and call the president of their HOA to let her know what happened. I was threatened a fine for not having my landscaping done before the end of 2007. I moved in the house February 2014. I had to go to the committee meeting and present my case, then 5 or 6 of my neighbors needed to discuss my fate. It took them until the next day to agree that I should not be fined. I'm moving as soon as I can. LPT, never live in an HOA. If your spouse thinks it won't be so bad, get another spouse. We put a flagpole in our front yard when I was like 9 and the HOA got all peed off. It turned into a big D-waving contest. First and only time I was on the news, in the newspaper, and on the radio, all within about 2 weeks. Ultimately, we were able to keep it through a big block party that sparked another controversy with the HOA. Also, about a year after I left home, they decided everyone had to have the same mailbox. They were nice mailboxes, but I believe they cost over $200, and everyone had to pay an additional fee that year to cover the cost. I get really bothered by this one. In my city, you can't park on the same side of the street as the fire hydrants are on. No, I don't mean you can't park near one. I mean, all of our fire hydrants are on the, let's say, the left side, and you cannot park anywhere on the left side. It's frustrating because all my life, friends have come over and parked in front of my house, and I have to run out and tell them that they can't park there because down the street there is also a fire hydrant on this side of the road. I know someone who lives in a place where they aren't allowed to own a truck because trucks are considered work vehicles and they aren't allowed. I'm sketchy on some of the details because I know there has to be service vehicles in the neighborhood at some point, but I do know personal and company trucks aren't allowed, not even locked up in the garage. They're looking to move because she has to keep her truck at her mom's house. In my city, an HOA fought to prevent a child with cerebral palsy from having a therapeutic playhouse built in his parents' backyard. U.S. Department of Justice wound up suing the HOA for discrimination and not complying with the ADA. Family wound up moving because of all the S. The HOA wanted proof that the playhouse was prescribed by a doctor or therapist, which is the most asinine thing I've ever heard. You know over the hedge where the lady goes around and measures grass? Yeah. I'd have to say that in real life is the craziest and pettiest thing I've seen the HOA do. Aside from that, I know someone who had the HOA tell them they needed one more bush in their yard and drove by and find them every day until they had one planted. From the flip side, I know a homeowner who got herself elected on the board just so she could paint her house a different shade of beige. Federal government wasn't enough. State government wasn't enough. County government wasn't enough. City government wasn't enough. Some people really do seem to want a neighborhood government stacked on top of all that to really get their fill of being told how to live or telling others how to live. Absolutely mind-boggling. Not too crazy of a rule, but I was an angry smarty of a child. We received multiple warning letters about our basketball hoop not being 1 foot off of the curb. Mind you, the streets were over 3 cars wide, and all of the neighbors' kids used it with me. There was one neighbor putting in complaints that lived on a different street. The last 3 days I had the hoop before my dad made me give it away, I obeyed my form of the rules. I placed it 1 foot from the curb into the street, cause F that guy. Now I don't play sports and it's his fault. Not being allowed to grow veggies or any type of food on a front lawn. Seriously, what's wrong with someone growing carrots or a tomato vine in their front yard? It's certainly a lot nicer looking than a car on blocks, and it's actually useful. I got a notice a rabbit that runs under my fence wore down a 2-inch gap in one picket of my fence. Got a notice I had a damaged fence and to fix it. Went got a new board and nailed it up. Got a new notice my fence didn't match, please replace the whole fence. Went and got someone else's scrap board and used that. I also got one from the city and the HOA for my lawn furniture. I'd called for bulk trash pickup and stuck out an old chair. The city flaked on picking it up, and within 36 hours, I got a ticket from the city and an HOA notice. Both were dismissed. Waiting for them to F with me again so I can sue them for charging a credit card fee in a state that it's illegal to do so. Condo association, not HOA. 8 units in 2-story buildings with the entrance to each unit at the corners of the building. Second story unit has stairs, obviously. When we bought the condo association agreement said that upkeep on all external structures, including stairways, were the responsibility of the condo association. A year after we moved in, after they had been bogged down with repair and repaint requests for stairways for 7-8 months, suddenly repair and upkeep of stairways are residents' responsibility. We stopped paying our dues and let our stairway go to S. They eventually repaired it, but never repainted it, even years after we moved out. I'm a little late to the party, but I'll actually come out of lurker mode for this one. I happen to rent a basement apartment in a fairly affluent HOA neighborhood, and the most ridiculous rule that the HOA has is there is no garbage collection at the house, i.e. a can you wheel to the street during the day and take back to your home afterward. There is one set of dumpsters for everyone to use at the entrance to the neighborhood, and that's it. I must also add that it's not like this is a bunch of townhouse and or condo buildings in a small area where that makes sense. This is a neighborhood full of 5,000 plus square foot homes that span several square miles. So basically, they have to load up all of their nasty and recycling too. Gotta protect the environment despite my huge A house and sports cars, lol, and drive it over to the dumpsters to throw away, freshening up their expensive cars in the process. I'm actually surprised that no one has tried to repeal it yet. One of my good friend's family has an Airstream camper that they would have sitting in their driveway. Well, apparently the HOA thought it was ugly, so they forced them to build a massive fence that was even uglier than the camper across their driveway in order to hide the camper from the road. I'm supposed to keep my lawn green and clear of debris or given a fine. This is presented with a multitude of problems. 1. We're in a drought, California. 2. The large tree outside is always shedding leaves. 3. I don't have a lawn because I'm living on a second-floor apartment. But my home is under the jurisdiction of an insane HOA. I show up to meetings to complain about these letters because they come with an unenforceable fine. Then they get mad at me for showing up to complain. If they just stop sending me these letters and fines, I'll stop showing up to complain. We live in a community where the property is owned and managed by a private company, but we have a residence board who votes on things like property management. Some of the things the residence board has voted on was increasing our parking areas, positive, and redoing the paving and landscaping between units, also positive. We have 4 common areas, and when we moved here, there were 4 playgrounds dedicated towards younger children in them. We also have a soccer pitch and basketball court, and a small playground geared towards older children. The community is a mix of older residents and young families. The residents board is mostly the older residents because the young families don't have time to go to these meetings. Over the summer, the residents board voted to remove 2 of the playgrounds and replace them with gazebos or picnic tables or some sort of gathering area. I'm not sure what the specifics are, but pretty much everyone I talked to was okay with the idea because it would be nice to have a place to gather and talk and have a coffee outside. But then the residents board had another meeting and voted to remove all of the playgrounds except for the one designed for older children. They made this decision because nobody on the residents board had ever used the playgrounds because their children are grown or they've never had children at all. They decided to leave the big kids playground, which has 2 swings and a tall slide and a climbing structure, but nothing low to the ground for smaller children. They said all the children could use that, but weren't going to add anything for the small children. We were pretty bummed about it because we just had a baby and now she wasn't going to have a playground nearby to play at, which was one of the reasons we moved here in the first place. But because we were too busy to go to the meetings or join the residents board, we didn't get a vote on it. But the story has a happy ending. Almost all of the families with small children contacted the management company in protest. So now, instead of replacing all 4 playgrounds with gazebos, we're getting 2 gazebos and our playgrounds are all getting new equipment. My grandmother got fined by HOA for having too many cars in front of the house. 3 cars were in the driveway, I was parked in the street. The street is at least 3 car lengths wide, so it was not blocking traffic in any way. Also, every day people have cars in front of their house in the street. The thing that gets me is there were so many cars in front of the house because our whole family was over there grieving and helping my grandmother. My uncle, her son, had just died earlier that day, so naturally we all flocked to her house. The real kick in the nuts, though, is that every member of the HOA had been by the house earlier that day to offer condolences, and apparently one of them thought it necessary to drop a notice in her mailbox that very day. She didn't pay it. Nobody on the board has said anything about it to her. My wife and I just bought our first house in May of this year. It's in a decent neighborhood on the outskirts of a small town. So I'm currently building a 20 by 24 garage. The slab is going to be poured next week and I hired some Amish to frame and sheath it. Anyway, I got printed out paper, not postage, in my mailbox. It said a fence has to be white. I already hand-built my fence and painted it white only because white barn paint was on sale. It also said any detached buildings have to have the same siding and the same shingles as the house. I already bought the shingles for super cheap since the warehouse they were in burnt down, so I got an H of a deal, but they are different than my house. Also, I don't want my garage to match the ugly light brown siding of my house. I threw the paper away before I even finished reading it all because F that. This is America. I'm pretty sure this letter came from the same C that made me pay $3 for the privilege to participate in a neighborhood yard sale in which I netted a whole $3. Here's the kicker though. I don't live in an HOA, so this C can go F herself. My wife and I are already planning to paint our fence rainbow patterned when we have to repaint it. Not sure what color I'm going to the siding on my garage though. Maybe blue. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. Guys, thank you for all the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.